first Thursday of the month. And we're very pleased to have with us our final speaker of the year, Manuel Vazquez Cano. This is the last one for this year, but we will be having another series next year. So stay tuned for that information as it becomes available. I'm really pleased to introduce Manuel. Manuel Vazquez Cano is a bilingual, bicultural Latino immigrant and a leader of applied research and evaluation at Education Northwest, where his work focuses on students classified as English learners and dual language education. He has partnered with state and district leaders on applied research and technical assistance projects, including recent work with the Oregon Department of Education to develop the state's multilingual learner strategic plan. Manuel has led and contributed to multiple studies examining the implementation and long-term outcomes of dual language immersion programs. He earned his doctorate in quantitative research methods in education from the University of Oregon. And so I'm going to switch the slides now so that Manuel can share his slides and give the presentation. He'll present for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for conversation at the end. Since we're a small group, please feel free to add your questions to the chat. And then at the end, you can unmute yourself and we can engage in a conversation between all of us. But for now, I'm going to stop sharing so that Manuel can share his slides.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. So let me just take a second to get set up. So let me start sharing my screen. You all seeing my slides? Okay.
Yep, looks great.
Sounds good. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share my research on the impact of dual language immersion programs on high school outcomes. This is actually one of the first spaces I'm sharing some of this information, so you have first preview to some of the results from this work. So this is in progress work that I'm still finalizing, so I would consider these results and findings to be still preliminary. Before I dive into the details, I just want to give you the headline upfront findings so you know where we're headed and you don't have to listen to 20 minutes of my methods monologue. So, this study found that students selected for dual language immersion programs keep pace academically with non-DLI peers and earn the seal of biliteracy at dramatically higher rates. But they also complete fewer dual enrollment and CTE courses, and suggesting that there's a trade-off between where access and opportunities that students have. And so this trade-off is important to reflect on and brainstorm to solve so that we don't have fewer opportunities for students. So over the next 30 minutes, I'll walk through how I got to these results, starting with some background on DLI programs. So just to set the stage, I'll just share a little overview of dual language immersion programs. So DLI programs allocate a significant portion of the instructional day to teach academic content in a partner language. So it can be, English and Spanish or Mandarin or Vietnamese or, any other host of different languages. And these programs, typically start in kindergarten, extending through elementary, and in more mature programs might go through middle school and high school. And DLI programs were, originally developed to support linguistically diverse students, students that come from a home that speaks a language other than English. But these programs can come in different flavors and enroll different population of students. So, some programs only enroll speakers of the partner language. So often these are called one-way programs, while others may enroll partner language speakers as well as those that only speak English. And so these are often referred to as two-way dual language immersion programs. So in this kind of second model, students from different linguistic backgrounds learn together and creates a mutually beneficial environment where students can gain and learn from like the linguistic and cultural diversity around them. And so ultimately, the goal of dual language programs are to support academic excellence, develop full biliteracy, and social cultural competence. And there's been a lot of research done on kind of bilingual education as a whole and dual language programs more specifically. Um, and research showing generally fairly positive results on different dimensions of outcomes. So uh, you know, I'll highlight this work from Porter and colleagues that published kind of a comprehensive review of bilingual education research and finding that it leads to generally positive academic and linguistic outcomes, along with a range of other social cultural benefits and cognitive benefits. There's also been quite a bit of rigorous lottery-based causal studies. So studies that can tell us, because DLI was implemented, this happened, that find positive impacts. And so, in these studies, DLI programs had students in DLI programs performed just as well, if not better than their peers on standardized assessments in elementary and middle school. And so this can tell us some of the benefits of the programs, but there's a gap in understanding how what outcomes are in high school. So do these benefits that we see in earlier grades persist? And do students have similar access to advanced coursework and attain kind of similar levels of course performance and credit accumulation? So that's part of what motivates this study, is to kind of think further into how students' outcomes go through their long-term kind of K through 12 trajectory. And I want to just talk a little bit about why kind of like thinking about high school is important. So, high school is an important juncture because the access to learning opportunities has real like downstream consequences. If we think about like being successful in your coursework is important because it directly affects whether students graduate or not, right? You need to take the right courses and pass your courses to make sure that you have enough credits to graduate. But in addition to kind of like that frame of like academic success, high school also opens other opportunities that prepare students for college and career. So, just highlight a few of those ways. The seal of biliteracy is something that each state offers and is an award given to students who demonstrate proficiency in two or more languages. And so, earning this seal signals that a student possesses like high levels of biliteracy, which is, a valuable skill to have, both in like, connection to your culture for partner language speakers, as well as for, in going to the market, like marketplace, being able to have this like skill that is valued. Career and technical education, or CTE courses, help students develop marketable skills that research shows that can boost both high school graduation rates and future earnings. Dual credit courses allow students to earn college credit while still in high school, which is also a benefit for students because it increases likelihood of college enrollment and success. So, thinking about some of the different ways that we can see access to opportunities in high school is important, and seeing how DLI affects that access is important consideration that I want to address in this research. And so before I get to kind of the central research question that guides the study, I also want to highlight that DLI programs exist within this kind of broader power dynamics that is not easy to ignore. These, as I mentioned earlier, these programs were initially developed to support linguistically diverse students. But over time, it has also attracted families from monolingual English-speaking backgrounds. And there's been a big increase in the presence of families from more advantaged positions of power kind of along racial, socioeconomic, linguistic dimensions. So it raises important questions and considerations around like who this program is benefiting and making sure that like the benefits of the program extend to all students, but also for multilingual students specifically, since they're the initial like focal group in this work. So that's with all this background, I'll just share now the central research question, which is for all students and for multilingual learners specifically, what is the effect of being selected to and enrolling in a DLI program in kindergarten on high school outcomes, including grade 9 cumulative credits, grade 12 cumulative credits, CTE and dual enrollment credits, and attainment of the seal of biliteracy? And so, in this work, I'm looking at the entire population of students that participated in DLI program when I run my analysis, and then I'm also looking at it for multilingual students specifically. And in this study, I define students that are multilingual as students who speak language other than English at home. And so this includes students that are classified as English learners who carry the EL label, but it may also include students that may have been initially English proficient, so aren't English learner classified, or who come from a home where the language is spoken, but they may be more kind of a heritage speaker where they haven't carried that. I would still say that the majority of the population in this study is students that are classified as English learners. So just a little bit more about the kind of definitions around the outcome measures. So I have 5 outcome measures in this study, and I'll go through the results for each of these. So the first 2 are cumulative credits earned by the end of grade 9 and by the end of grade 12. So these are, capture the overall academic progress and course completion at different points in high school. The third is cumulative dual credits earned, which counts the total credits students earned in dual credit classrooms by the end of grade 12. And again, these are courses that students can take that provide high school credits as well as college credits. The fourth is cumulative CTE credits, which measures the total credits a student earned in career technical education classrooms. And the fifth is seal of biliteracy, which is kind of more like a yes/no outcome. Did a student ever earn the seal? Sorry, realize I didn't skip that. So I'll now walk through the study design and methods I used to answer the questions. So just first, a little bit of context of where this study took place. So it took place in a large urban school district in Western United States that has a long and rich history with dual language immersion programs. So the district has operated DLI programs for about 40 years. So these are really mature, well-established programs. And currently, or at the time of the study, 32 schools in the district hosted DLI programs and across 5 partner languages. And the district uses, a mixture of 2-way dual language immersion programs and 1-way models. And it also offers pathways that span from kindergarten through 5th grade, continuing to middle school, and extend into high school. And what the programs look in high school can, vary a little bit. Some of them offer, for example, a language course plus social studies in the partner language, or in Spanish, for example. Or another school might offer language and math course. So what dual language programs look like are a little bit less defined once you get into some of those secondary grades. And if you interact with dual language programs, that might not be a big surprise to you. And so the way that students enter these programs is through an application to the district's lottery system. And so this lottery part is an important part of the research design that I'll explain next. And I think it's important to think about because I first want to just kind of show you why a simple comparison between just looking at everybody that participated in DLI compared to everybody that didn't participate in DLI would be problematic. So for example, this graph here shows you just some descriptive information for the group that was selected to participate in DLI, which is kind of that red dot, and for the group that was not selected to participate in DLI, which is the blue dot. And so, for example, you can see that about 40% of students in the selected for DLI group was multilingual, whereas about 20% for the non-DLI group was multilingual. And so the difference between these two groups are pretty substantial, right? There's like a 20.4 percentage point difference in the composition of like students that were multilingual by group. So, so I think the key thing is that the students who end up in DLI are different from those who do not, right? And you can see that there's like differences across other characteristics. So if we just simply compared outcomes between these two groups, we would not really be able to tell if the differences were caused by the program or by other, pre-existing differences between students. And so that's why we need an approach where we can have like more like comparable group of students. And that's where kind of the district's lottery system comes in. So the I'll try to kind of go through the lottery system. So here's how it kind of works in a simplified form. It's a little bit more complicated than what I'm presenting here. But before students start their kindergarten time, parents apply to the lottery and fill out an application. And some students also receive priority access, like those that have a sibling already enrolled in the program, for example. And so the district sets aside a number of seats assigned for each program and different group. And so when the number of applicants exceeds the available seats, the district uses kind of a random lottery assignment, right, to determine who gets in. There's more interest and capacity, so it's kind of like a lottery selection. And so this is, a natural experiment similar to a randomized controlled trial. When the number of applicants is the same or fewer than available seats, everyone gets in. So there's really like no random assignment, right? Everybody that applied got in. There was enough capacity. So for this study, I only use the randomized portion of the population. So those that went through the lottery where there were more interest than actual capacity and had to do random selection. And so this allows us to make causal claims about the impact of DLI. So this helps us say, because of DLI, these outcomes happened. And let me give you a little bit more kind of description on how the flow goes. So this flow chart kind of highlights how I got to the sample of students I used in the study. So, first I took all of the valid lottery submissions across the study period. And then I restricted it to only those who went through that randomized portion of the lottery, right? So that it immediately eliminates like a significant portion of the students that applied for it. And so that means that I excluded those who were admitted in cases where there were enough seats for everyone. And from this randomized group, I identified those that were, offered a seat in the DLI program and those that were not offered a seat in the DLI program. And then from there, I further limited the sample to students who were still enrolled in the district during high school, since, I needed to observe their outcomes in high school. And so as you can see, there's, quite a bit of attrition. I wasn't able to follow everybody from kindergarten all the way through high school.
Manuel, can you move your slide? I think we're not seeing that next slide, I don't think.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Carrie, for pointing that out.
Great, thanks.
So yeah, just to recap, to make sure that you all see it, start with valid lottery submissions restricted to those that are in randomized groups, and then identify those that were offered a seat in DLI and those that were not offered a seat. And then I further restricted to those that I actually had data for, those that were still in the district from high school, in high school. So yeah, so I think, I wasn't, so at the end, I'm not able to follow everybody just because naturally students that start in kindergarten maybe don't stay in the district throughout the whole time. And so that's a limitation that I'll talk a little bit about later as well. So this is the actual kind of sample that I'm working with. So I followed 7 cohorts of students who entered kindergarten through the random assignment between 2007-8 all the way to 2013-14 school years. Um, and so I'm working with, a couple of different samples, right? So for the grade 9 credit accumulation analysis, I had a sample of a little over 1,000 students across all 7 cohorts. And for the grade 12 outcomes, so these are, total credit accumulation, um, dual enrollment CTE credit accumulation, and CLO literacy. The sample was smaller at 578 students because only the first 4 cohorts had, reached certain grades that we could observe those outcomes in the data. And I'll highlight a couple of important facts. Of the students that start and that are offered a seat in DLI in kindergarten, 80% of students complete at least, the elementary portion of their DLI experience. Showing like pretty strong persistence in the programs once you start. And 69% were enrolled in DLI during high school for at least 1 year. So a lot of like a big portion of the students that are selected continue on to DLI pathways in secondary grades. And so I also just want to kind of show you a key check for the study. So the graph on the left is the same one I showed you earlier, representing kind of like the full lottery. And, again, sharing that there's like pretty significant differences between those that were selected for DLI and those that were not selected for DLI. And the graph on the right is only the randomized sample, right? So after restricting the sample to that randomized portion of the lottery, the groups are much more comparable. The differences between students who were offered a seat in DLI and those who were not are now like really small and statistically insignificant. So this gives us a little bit more confidence that the lottery did what it was supposed to do, which was create 2 groups that are similar on observable characteristics. And so yeah, so that gives us more confidence that we can say, because of DLI, this happened. And I'll just quickly walk through this. This is kind of the model that I used to estimate the outcomes. So it was linear models for continuous variables and linear probability models for those binary variables. And so I'll just point you to kind of like the main piece of this that we're interested in, and they'll go through in the results. So, what we're interested in is seeing what the estimate is for students that were offered a seat in dual language programs. And the kind of this beta one highlighted in red is what we'll focus on, which is the estimate in the difference in outcome between students offered a seat in DLI compared to those that were not offered a seat. And before going to the results, just I'll give you a couple of like main limitations to keep in mind as like we look at these results. So there's, I think, 2 big things. The first is attrition. So like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't able to follow every single student that was in the sample from kindergarten. I think overall I was only able to follow about 50% of students from the original lottery through high school. So that's like a significant amount of attrition. And importantly, there was also more attrition among students who were not selected for DLI. So there was a high differential attrition, means that students that remain in the sample may not be perfectly representative of the original randomized group, which is a risk to the study and a limitation. The graph I showed you comparing like the characteristics of students after randomization was after attrition. So there's still some confidence that both groups are similar in observable characteristics, but the high attrition rates are still kind of like a limit to the study. And then the second thing is also that the multilingual learner sample is quite small, um, ranging from 65 to like 163 students, depending on the analysis. So this, when you think about it, is like good news because it means that like fewer multilingual students were actually included in the random selection. So a lot of them were getting like priority in being selected to programs. Um, but so it's good for, students getting access to it. But it's not great for my research study, which limits my ability to detect statistically significant effects on this subgroup. Even if there are differences, just with the amount of students I have in the sample, it would be really hard to detect significant effects. So those are just kind of two real constraints from the study that, yeah, I just wanted to share before jumping into the results. So let me walk through each outcome, starting with grade 9 credit accumulation. So you'll see a few of these graphs. So these like coefficient plots, and I'll take just like a second to explain how to read these, since you'll see a few of them. So each dot on the chart represents the estimated effect of being offered a seat in a DLI program on a specific outcome. So in this case, credit accumulation in a overall and in a particular subject area. So the whiskers around each dot is a confidence interval. So that tells us kind of like the range of plausible values, right? So the point is like, this is what the model estimates, and then the whiskers around it can tell us, or the impact could be as high as this or as low as this, right? So the key reference point is that like horizontal red dotted line at 0. So if the dot and its confidence interval overlaps with that 0, it means that we can't really be sure that there's an effect or that we can't be confident that there's differences between DLI and non-DLI group, which we interpret as students performing similarly. And if the dot and the entire confidence interval is above that, we can be more confident that there is like a positive impact. And if the dot and lines are below the kind of horizontal 0 vertical line, it means that there's a negative effect. So as you look at these charts, focus on those things, right? Where the dot is relative to 0, and if those like whiskers crosses that 0 horizontal line. So, in this case, starting with this grade 9 credit accumulation outcome, the finding here is that students that were offered a seat in DLI programs attained a similar number of credits in grade 9. So as you can see, the dots are clustered around that 0 line. There was no difference in credit accumulation between DLI and non-DLI groups. So it just tells us that students who spent a significant portion of their elementary years and continued into this program attained similar amounts of credits than students that were in a non-DLI pathway. So now let's move over to grade 12. So by the end of grade 12, the picture is similar as far as like total credits. DLI students earned a comparable total number of credits as non-DLI students, as well as similar core content credits. So those are those ELA, math, science, social studies, right? You see similar, no differences in the effect of DLI. But you do start to see some like patterns when we look at like other courses. So DLI students earned more world language credits than those, right? So you can see that orange dot. It's about like a half credit more. And this is like statistically significant, which makes sense because a lot of these students are continuing on to language courses in high school and maybe earning more world language credits that way. But I think the key thing is that students are performing academically and receiving credits at like similar paces as students that go through the non-DLI pathway. But there are some like differences in where those credits are earned. Um, Now, for multilingual students, the patterns were kind of broadly similar, right? Multilingual students who are offered a seat in DLI earn comparable credits overall. So if you see that, blue one, the lines can kind of cross the zero, so we can't be confident that there is like a positive or negative effect on it. So we can say that it's similar. There is some suggestive evidence, and really want to say suggestive because of the small sample size, that DLI may be helping multilingual students access core content courses at somewhat higher rates. So if you look at the estimate for math, science, you see that the effect is positive, and the whiskers are just touching that zero line. But there's some suggestive evidence that that multilingual students may be earning more credits in these kind of core content areas. So I think studies with larger samples might be able to have more precise estimates, but I think that there's like some positive trends with that. Let me move on to something that's also a little bit more kind of like definitive. So here we see a clear and significant impact. So DLI assignment had a strong positive effect on seal of biliteracy attainment. So for the full sample of students being offered a seat in DLI, it was led to a 25 percentage point increase for the group in earning the seal of biliteracy. And as you can see, that's a statistically significant result. And for multilingual students, the estimate was even larger. Being assigned to DLI led to a 37.5 percentage point increase for the group in seal of biliteracy attainment. Though this one wasn't statistically significant at the conventional 0.05 level. And so I think this is, a powerful finding. It tells us that DLI programs are delivering on one of the core promises of DLI, which is, biliteracy development. And so students who went through DLI are far more likely to demonstrate proficiency in two languages by the time they graduate. And while DLI boosted seal of biliteracy attainment outcomes, and it also helped students earn more world language credits, and may have also come with like a trade-off. So DLI assignment had a negative effect on dual credit accumulation by grade 12 and CTE credit accumulation. And specifically, DLI students earned about half a credit fewer in CTE by the end of grade 12. And this difference was statistically significant. And they also earned about like a quarter credit fewer in dual enrollment courses, which was kind of marginally significant. And so a half credit is meaningful for CTE courses because, prior research shows that, taking additional CTE courses in the same like content area compounds some of the future benefits, like future earnings. And dual credit courses are important because they're also gateways to college readiness, college preparation, and just entering college with some credit helps students persist. So if DLI students are systematically taking fewer of these courses, it could have implications for their post-secondary trajectories. And so I think this is an important consideration to think about just what access are students having and where there might be opportunities to expand access. So let me take a step back and summarize kind of the overall story. So just thinking about like some of those like core goals of dual language immersion programs. And I don't have like the social cultural competence piece here because I don't have like a good measure for it in my data. But just first thinking about academic achievement, students offered a seat in DLI earn similar credits as non-DLI students, suggesting that it's supporting like academic achievement just as well as non-DLI pathways. And it actually may be helping multilingual students access core content courses at higher rates. Again, this I think would need a further examination with cases with larger samples. In thinking about like bilingualism and biliteracy, students offered a seat in DLI are earning the seal of biliteracy at much higher rates. And so suggesting that it's meeting its goal around this kind of ideal of full biliteracy. But there's, a trade-off. DLI students are completing fewer dual enrollment and CTE courses, which are, pathways that can boost college access and future earnings. So, we're in a situation where DLI is achieving its core goals of, academic access and biliteracy, but potentially at the expense of other opportunities. And so I think this tension has important implications for how districts and schools design and implement DLI programs. And it's also just a reflection of reality. A student only has so much time in their schedule, right? And so I think it's also just part of that. But yeah, just thinking about what implications this has for DLI practitioners. I can share a couple of thoughts, but I'm very curious to hear what others think around some of these findings. For first, I just want to kind of share that I think that DLI programs are an effective approach for supporting academic achievement and developing biliteracy. I think results from this work supports that, and there's a whole bunch of other research that shows the positive effect on other outcomes that I didn't look at, such as assessment outcomes. So I think it's there should be confidence that students here in DLI are doing well academically and also being supported in bilingual development. And I think that the trade-offs that were identified here are not inevitable. I think that they can be mitigated with proactive planning. So for example, I think it's an important thing to think about is examining what DLI looks like in secondary settings. I think that what programs look like are still very much in infancy. It's less defined. It can have a lot of variability across buildings. And just to kind of giving that more attention, maybe reviewing a master schedule to identify any potential conflicts between DLI coursework and other opportunities such as CTE access can be an actionable step. Just making sure that we're approaching scheduling with that lens of what opportunities are we putting barriers on. And I think there's also opportunities to expand the core content courses that are offered in partner languages during high school. For example, if you can think about a CTE course in the partner language, that might be a way to mitigate some of the barriers that are placed in kind of this trade-off. So I think it just provides some attention to making sure that DLI programs in secondary settings have this lens of maximizing opportunities for students so that they can go for that. And I realized I didn't change my slide again, so apologies for that, but it's what I said. But I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I'm curious to hear what you all think about this. I'm happy to answer any questions about methods, background, but I'm also really curious to hear what you think the implications are for this.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Really, really interesting. It does look like there are questions about the methods, and I'm sure about the outcomes as well. So Nicolette had a question in the chat. She also has raised her hand. So why don't you go ahead and ask your question? And if you have another one as well, go ahead.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I've spent a lot of time working in dual language in North Carolina, K-8, and then supporting the expansion of secondary dual language. And this is always a problem, a trade-off for students that they have to either choose dual language classes or choose the arts, band, orchestra, and they don't have time to fit everything in, or CTE courses. So I love your suggestion, and I definitely will take it back to my state about, when possible, trying to have the CTE courses in the target language. I think it offers a fantastic opportunity for students to use the target language in real world situations, whether it's carpentry or technology or medical fields. I think that's a great way for them to learn the language, since usually they have 2 courses or so in high school. Why not have one of those as a CTE if you can hire a bilingual CTE teacher? So I just want to thank you for your research. It's really sparked some ideas. And I love that as a recommendation. So our students don't have to choose either or. If you hire bilingual staff for CTE, they can have both. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Nicolette, do you also want to ask your question about the lottery and the
Sure,
the
sure. At the
sample?
beginning, when you were doing your sample selection, I was just curious as to why you excluded those students who did not get the lottery process of application, because the students would still be in the same program for K-12 and would still have the benefits of that experience. So why making the choice to remove that group?
Yeah, I think that the main motivation for that was because part of like what I wanted to do was to be able to get results that tell me because of dual language programs this happened, right? We saw these outcomes, so more of like a causal relationship rather than correlational. And so only focusing it on those that went through like ran through the random lottery selection allows me to make those claims. Whereas if I kept everybody, because it included some students that kind of like self-selected into the program, those claims would be weaker. So that was the main motivation, wanting to be able to say DLI caused this.
Okay, thank you.
Did you think about also just using those students just to see whether the differences, because then you would have been able to look at differences for multilingual learners with more confidence, even though you wouldn't be able to talk about causality, you could look at correlation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in the paper I'm writing, I have like some descriptives around that, but I haven't gone as deep into that. But
Okay.
I think that's maybe a helpful suggestion to explore that a little bit more.
And it looks like Danny has some questions. Do you want to come off mute, or shall I go ahead and ask the questions?
Ken. Hi, Manuel. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's very engaging research. And I had just a few questions. You can see them in the chat. I was just wondering, because you followed 7 cohorts, I really love your design and the way, and I know that, like you said, to make the sample to make the to reduce the differences between the student groups, you needed to limit your sample. So I understand that, but I love the cohort. The fact that you followed multiple cohorts. I was curious if you noticed any differences among the cohorts, and if you can't speak to that because the sample's too small, I understand. I was
Mhm.
also curious if, because you followed cohorts from '08 to 2014, if I remember correctly, if emerging research or just your interaction and your engagement in the field makes you think that you would find anything different or similar if you were doing the research now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to your first question around differences across cohorts, I did do some like analysis to see like how it changes across the times. And I do see like some differences in, the direction of the estimate um, across cohorts, but because like the numbers are so small, they tend to like not be statistically significant, right? And so it's hard to say that there are differences across cohorts, but you do see some like differences in like the estimate across different years. So I think that there is some indication of that. And one thing that I saw was that the um, earlier years had more like positive results. So it does indicate that maybe there might have been some changes more recently. And um, the district that I work with has had like some implementation research done on their DLI programs. And so there was one done in like 2014, and a team of us at Northwest did one in like 2020. And in both cases, there was like fairly like strong like implementation in some dimensions, but more recently, like some like weaker areas, right, of like some of specific like instructional strategies being used that you expect to see in like dual language classrooms. So I think that there might be reason to believe that like there is opportunities to like strengthen the program now more than maybe where it was in the past. Um, and I think, some of these programs are like continuously evolving. And then little decisions can really make big changes, right? Like, so for example, one school had like a teacher, a longstanding teacher that was their like math dual language teacher in their Vietnamese program. And so like, if somebody like that leaves, it really changes like the high school dual language model, right? And replacing somebody like that is difficult.
Right.
So yeah, so I think that there is always kind of like variation in like how the programs are that can like really have like differences in what they look like.
Other questions or comments or reactions from Manuel? Yeah, Phyllis.
I don't know if you got into these kinds of details, but when we help secondary schools in our region, I'm from the Northeast region, we often hear lots of challenges with scheduling,
Mhm.
which then creates that lack of opportunity for some of these courses because they're not prioritizing the scheduling for the dual language students first and then everything else. So it's usually the opposite. I was wondering if you had some findings about that. If you dug
Yeah,
that into that level of program structure. Yeah.
yeah. So I would say like in this study, it was mostly like looking at like some of like the quantitative data, but in other work that I've done with the district, we have heard some, variation in experiences across buildings. And so, we've hosted like focus groups with students and teachers in DLI programs. And I think it matters a lot like who the leader is
Mhm.
in some of the buildings, right? So in some cases we would hear like, oh, like, our leaders don't really understand dual language programs. And so we're just kind of like the room in the corner over there with like a few posters around it. And then in other schools, there would be leaders that have more experience being in dual language programs and feeling much more supported and like central in like the scheduling process. So I think that there is like a quite a bit of differences in this district that I worked with in that, where in some places it might be more central to the planning process. And in other places it might be more of that where it's just an afterthought and not really like integrated into it. So yeah, I think maybe like, it's just making me think that that's probably like an important thing for like district guidance, right? To be able to
Mhm.
say like when you are planning and if you have a DLI program, this is maybe like a lens to take as you're delivering that master schedule.
Yeah. I think some of in the middle school, what I'm picking up from helping middle school programs is that they're just not quite understanding that students actually have to take English language arts and the partner language arts, which
Mhm.
means that they likely will have to give up something.
Mhm.
And that is like not quite computing in
Mm.
with leaders when thinking about the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can say a lot of like things like this, but I know in practice it's like such a hard thing to, like such a hard thread to, what is the saying? Like needle to thread?
That's right.
Yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
one of the things I've seen recently that, is beyond like what's in the control of districts, but the state of Oregon recently passed a law that changed like the high school requirement from English language arts to just language arts.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
And so that, something like that opens like a big opportunity,
Yeah,
right? For
right
what
there.
can
Yeah.
take. So, you can't control that in your district, but maybe policy, like wider policy can support that too.
I'm in Massachusetts and we're going through new graduation requirements, and I'm going to bring that up at the next
Mhm.
advisory group.
Yeah, it's called Access to Linguistic Inclusion.
Yeah, thank you.
So it sounds like this study could be redone in 4 or 5 years, one after that has been implemented to see whether that has any impact on on DLI.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a really important, yeah, just like policy change that could change the way it is. I know that there is an implementation study going on right now to just foresee like how are districts interpreting it, and are they even like using some of like the guidance from it. So I think that some of the results from that might be like super interesting to see like what potential changes we could expect to see in some of the.
Yeah, very cool. So, other questions? I have a couple, but I want to give other people a chance. I was wondering if there were any other outcomes you thought about, if you thought about doing graduation or post-secondary access.
Yes, I am doing graduation. I
Okay.
originally intended to present that, but I was a little less confident in some of the data that was there yet, so I wanted to do a little bit more exploration on that before sharing it out. But that will be part of the final kind of like paper around that.
Okay. And the other thing, you probably also the sample might be too small, but I'm curious because you used the term multilingual learners, in terms of their how they progress in both bilingual in both biliteracy, like in English literacy and Spanish literacy. Like, is there a way? It's just sort of like, is there a way to show? I mean, maybe it's with the seal of biliteracy. Maybe I'm thinking out loud here, but to show the success for multiple for students that begin with multiple different kinds of language backgrounds, the success through high school. Is there a way to sort of show the different backgrounds and how where they get to at the end? I'm not sure if I'm being clear.
Yeah, I could think about like different ways, like seeing like students that were like initially fluent English proficient, students that reclassified by certain time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think definitely the main thing that we would run up against is just like sample sizes. But for example, for credit 9 credit accumulation, there's like a little bit more flexibility in that sample. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. And do you have plans to do a study with a larger sample size?
I mean, I would love to do a study with larger sample size. It's like I mentioned earlier, like if I was just to use the entire sample, there would be a lot of like multilingual learners. But because the district is like prioritizing those students to participate, they're not in the lottery system as much, or in like the random selection part of the lottery. It's good, it's great, because that means that they're serving the students that the programs are intended for. But I think it would take like many cohorts, many years to get to like a good sample size.
Okay. Okay.
But in other places that maybe have like that's a larger district or like a statewide approach, I think that would lend for many more opportunities to be able to do that.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll have to figure out how to do that study.
Yeah. If anybody here wants to collaborate on that, I'd be really.
Okay. Phyllis, you have another question?
Well, it was more like an observation. So you said attrition was, a major factor here in following the students. And I think that that continues to be a major issue, even, all over the place, helping the district leaders understand how they have to start with higher numbers in the elementary if they're going to be able to sustain the program all the way through the secondary, or to think about creatively including newcomers, for example, and allowing those late arrivals to come into the program, but making sure that they have the right supports to be successful. That's like good advice to if you're thinking about what can we share to district leaders, what from your findings, the issue of attrition would be something that would be helpful to confirm.
Yeah. At the same time, as I found it so encouraging that 70% of the students took some DLI course or some course in another language sometime in high school, right? So that was definitely very encouraging. So I really want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as I said before, this was the last in our speaker series for this year. This concludes the second annual speaker series, and join us next year for the third annual series. There's information on this QR code or following this link. And if you have any interest in topics that you would like us to think about, or people that you would like us to think about inviting, please let us know. We're actually filling our dance card right now as we speak, and really looking forward to our next year. But this was a great way to end. Thank you so much, Manuel. I really appreciate your research and can't wait to see all the additional findings that you come up with. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. John, are you raising your hand? Oh no, you're just applauding.
I was clapping. Thanks so much, Manuel.
Yeah, thank you both for the opportunity. This was fun to just I don't get a lot of opportunities to do more like academic-y presentations, so
Yeah, we're trying to make this be sort of like this unique space where it's both academic and practitioner, but really digging deep into some research. All of us who really love thinking about these like samples and all the different decisions that you make to get to the findings that you have. So
yeah.
thank you, and I hope we see you next year for our some of our additional speakers.
Yeah, I definitely want to be a little bit more connected to that.
Okay. All right, great.
And Manuel, there is a question in the chat. Maybe you saw that. If you don't mind sharing your LinkedIn, or if you have other ways you want people to connect with you, we can send that out in the follow-up email as well.
Yeah, let me see if I can log into my LinkedIn. But yeah, I think feel free to share my email with them, and I post my link.
Yeah, our colleague Mina will follow up with you, and then we can, if there are ways, to connect to your research, your center, your whatever you feel comfortable sharing for people who were here or who listen to the recording, for them to be able to follow up with you. Great. Well, again, really appreciate your work. Thanks for being here.
Okay. Bye-bye.